Welcome to Industry Insiders, created and produced by the Center for Entertainment and Hospitality Management at California State University, Fullerton. During this series, we sit down with influential professionals in the entertainment and hospitality industries that are located across the world. Our goal is to learn about each professional's career and gain wisdom from their experience in the industry.
Today's guest is Bryan Churchill. Bryan has over 25 years of practical hospitality and tourism industry experience, including global MICE sales, hotel operations, and food and beverage leadership capacities.
He is currently the Vice President of Hotel Sales, where he is responsible for national and regional direct sales, member hotel communications, and marketing programming efforts for self-contained groups within the greater Los Angeles area. Bryan is also an EHM Advisory Board Member and a thought leader throughout the hospitality industry.
And with that, I would like to welcome Bryan Churchill to Industry Insiders.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here.
We have Bryan with us, and then our co-host for today, Joanna Sosa Lazaro. How are you doing, Joanna?
Hello. I'm doing great. Thank you.
We're happy to have you. Bryan, the first question we want to ask you is, think back to what was your first job in the hospitality industry?
Just right at it, huh, Mike?
Just right at it.
Okay, first job. Well, I was a busboy in a restaurant called Oakmont Inn in Santa Rosa, California. And honestly, I kind of got bit by the bug. I love the responsibility. It was a sort of an upscale restaurant. And so instead of just being called a busboy, we were actually a waiter's assistant. And I'll tell you, that title alone empowered me. And I could just tell that it was something I really was going to enjoy. But that was a million years ago.
Not too long ago. So that's what you did first.
Yeah.
What was the next job you did? What was your first management position? That's a good
first management position. So I kind of, I went through school, junior college, college, what have you, and then graduated. My first management role was with Marriott Hotels.
Yeah.
I was a catering sales manager, but I started out in the ID program, which many of you know probably now is the Explorer program. But it was a phenomenal 6-month sort of multi-dimensional, fully immersive training program. And then once you graduated that 6-month experience, if you will, you were placed within the organization, and I was a catering sales guy, food and beverage at the Anaheim Marriott.
Yeah. Good. So I'm going to turn over to Joanna after saying that Myra says hello, Bryan. We're all happy to have you here. So Myra says hello. Joanna, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and then ask Bryan your first question.
Okay. So my name's Joanna. I'm a part of the EHM program at Cal State Fullerton. I'm also doing business analytics, and I'm scheduled to graduate May 2021.
Good. Cool.
May.
All right.
2021.
2021.
Wow.
So we got a year left of Joanna, so we're excited. What's your first question?
Yes. So my first question is, what drew you into the industry, and how would you describe your experiences working in different types of environments?
Yeah. Wow. It's so interesting because I think, as a kid, you dream to be something, whether it's an architect or a fireman. And those were both my cases, architect, fireman, rock and roll drummer. And then you sort of fall into something, or if you're lucky enough, you can pursue those dreams for a short period of time. But I really never saw this coming. And so I loved the idea when I said, I literally as a busboy, I loved it. And then I got into doing catering, and it allowed me to sort of see a project come to fruition from the beginning to the end. Lots of planning for the catered event, the execution of the event, the cleanup of the event, and then working with customers and engaging with various stakeholders. It was phenomenal. And as a kid, I really didn't understand how much I loved it. But then once I got formal education and got into Marriott, I knew, you kind of get bit by the bug, like I said, or you bleed hospitality. And I'm telling you, it just ran through my veins. I guess I never knew exactly which direction it would go. I was a foodie, as they say. I was really into food and beverage and the culinary side for many, many years, and then made a transition into sales where I was actually selling, hotel rooms, if you will, or the hotels in general. And throughout, decades of effort and work and so forth, here I am now. But
when you grew up, this kind of central coast of California, correct?
Yeah, Santa Rosa.
Talk to us about all the different places you have lived besides where you grew up.
Yeah. Well, that was, I think, one of the other unexpected benefits of just the hospitality world, and particularly hotels. So, I went to school at a rival college. I won't say their name, but it's sort of close where you are. And lived in Orange County, Anaheim area, then Santa Barbara, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, back to Santa Rosa, California. In between, I went to Maui, Hawaii.
Yes.
And yeah, which was amazing. All these experiences, different roles within the hotel, and usually with the upward mobility, a little bit more responsibility, larger team, greater budget responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. And then ultimately sort of made my way back down the coast from Santa Rosa to, let's think about this, Pasadena, and then Beverly Hills, and then Manhattan Beach, and then LAX, where Amani and I worked. But that part of the adventure has been just amazing. Different communities, different friends, different business associates.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were going to pick maybe a favorite city you've lived in, place you lived in, what comes to mind first?
Well, come on, I gotta say LA. I mean, I work for Discover Los Angeles and Miami. Yeah, I'm gonna say LA. But I will say, I found myself an island boy. I absolutely loved Maui. I was just north of Lahaina, Maui, in a place called Honokawai, in Kahana Manor, which was sort of like the Marriott dormitory. All the Marriott folks worked there. It was phenomenal. So if it wasn't LA, I'd say Maui.
Good. That's what I figured, I'm just trying to ask you the questions.
Yeah.
You've worked in many places for many people. When you think about some of the best leaders that you've worked with or for, what characteristics come to mind?
It's such a great question. I think it's difficult to answer when you have so many great leaders that you emulate. So what my sort of approach was, and the formula, if you will, is, take the pieces that really resonate with you and sort of create your own self. So it's difficult for me to just point out one person, but I will say, and Amani, the name, Steve Heitzner with Marriott. He's Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for the Americas. And honestly, frankly, his role could have even expanded beyond that at this point in time. But he was so to the point, and it really resonated with me. A couple of things he said is, success is never final. He always questioned data. So you made database decisions. It wasn't emotional, it was database. So success was never final, database. And then the one that I just loved, because it just sort of stopped you dead in your tracks, was a strategy without execution is a hallucination. And so if you just kind of put that into perspective, even if you have these big dreams and you have a strategy, but you're not executing, it really is just a hallucination. So that kind of resonated with me. He's a brilliant guy. Amongst others, even my current leadership, our president and CEO and my senior vice president of sales, just great guys.
Agreed. Joanna, turn it over to you for another one.
Okay. How has networking helped you out in your career, and how has it impacted your career as well?
Such another great question, guys. You're spot on. It's interesting. I think you can, maybe there's more than two categories, but there's definitely two categories of those that are really hyper networked and use all the platforms available to them to create this incredible network. And I work with some of those folks that are either my peers or subordinates or superiors, and it's amazing. I've kind of gone a little bit of a different route where it's just not quite as, casting that wide net. I've been a little bit more selective. So my primary networking tool that's just open to the public, if you will, is LinkedIn. And I love LinkedIn. I kind of pride myself in involving myself with LinkedIn. And Amani and I were talking about this a little bit, because I might be selling myself short on some of the other platforms, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or what have you. And I don't have the gram. I do a little tweeting on the side. And I've got 2.2 friends on Facebook. So I've really focused on LinkedIn from a platform perspective. But then it's really leveraging your peer set, those that you work with, all your stakeholders, and that's where I get really the most, influence and input and ideas is from that type of one-on-one networking.
Yeah, Yeah. So speaking of networking, I moved here in April 30th, 2007. And I worked at the Renaissance Montreux Hotel, which is right next to LAX Marriott. And Bryan was the director of marketing there. I was the director of marketing at Renaissance. I get a call from him and we go over there and we're talking. And maybe it was 3 or 4 months after I started. And I was struggling because just getting adjusted to West Coast life was a little different. And the hotel had its challenges. And he was sitting there, Bryan was sitting there, and he's like, why are you complaining? Just do something about it. Stop complaining or whatever. And so, I'll never forget how Bryan kind of called me out, but I was like, all right, I can take it. So, appreciate that. So I just want to take the time to tell you, thank you for that as well.
I hope I said it nicely.
I mean, you were a little bit brisk, but I needed it. I needed a little kick in the butt. So respect.
Thank you.
How have you been handling what we're going through right now with the pandemic, and how has your job started to shift?
Yeah. Wow. It's just been amazing because what do they say? Through disruption comes innovation, and that puts a lot of pressure, I think, on folks that are in a leadership role. Because you are responsible for this innovation. And what are you going to do? How are you going to help us? What's next? And depending on the stakeholder, whether it's a direct report or one of our clients or some of our member stakeholders, it puts a little pressure on you. And so it's funny. I think I feel energized. I think I feel really a sense of additional responsibility that has kept me energized and hyper engaged in what's happening on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis. But one of the things I did notice, and based on the question you're asking, is that I've really reverted back to some of the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting as a, kind of a foodie, back in the day, they used to say, the KISS principle. I don't know, keep it simple or keep it short and simple. And there's others, keep it simple, stupid. But anyway, KISS principle, the MBWA, management by walking around, which, may sound funny, but even like the 5 Ps, prior planning prevents poor performance. All of those, if you translate them into the real world environment and keeping it simple, that's what we want right now. Real simple answers. Find out good data, whether it's the case curve of COVID specifically, or whether a hotel is open, simple. It's just you need good, clear, concise, simple data. If you think about the management by walking around, all that really means is just engage everyone. So if you're in a restaurant, you're engaging the customer, the back of the house, the front of the house, the hostess, whatever. It's the same thing with me. Make sure I'm walking around and keeping in touch with all of the stakeholders and understanding their priorities. And then 5 Ps, again, prior planning prevents poor performance, without a doubt. Think about your plan. And that kind of goes to the whole hallucination thing. If you don't have a strategy and you don't have a plan, it's a hallucination. So my team and I, and that's one of the other things too, is I absolutely rely on the team. I am not making any decisions on my own. I need their brilliance and their collective thought processes to determine what the solutions are. So I've really been leveraging that and leveraging them in that 5P approach.
Good. Now, I know you lost a portion of your team due to this. How were you able to still be a mentor to them and support them, and then keep your current team still focused and not kind of worried or stressed out as well?
Yeah. It's difficult to answer this without getting emotional because, we had an 8-year-old family, if you will. Most of the folks have been working with me for about 8 years now. And, I have been so fortunate to assemble a team of some of the most talented individuals that are within this industry, or destination marketing organization, or CVB. So the loss was typical to that of a family or a pet or something along those lines. I mean, it was really rough. So we're working through that, and we stay connected because although they were layoffs to the tune of about 72% of my team, we are hoping that, based on a course correction and hopefully some recovery, that we're going to be able to bring these folks back. So I've been keeping in touch with them, and I know they appreciate it, and they're wonderful. They're very resilient and self-starting individuals. So they're doing okay, and they understand the circumstances. And then at the same time, the 5 of us that remain out of a team of slightly over 20, we almost have survivor's guilt to a degree, because here we are chugging along, trying to make it work. But at the same time, I think we have an additional sense of responsibility on behalf of those players that are no longer on the team. So it's been interesting, but we are 100% committed, to the point that on Fridays we're doing interviews at 3 p.m. And
that's good, though. We appreciate hearing from you. Yes. I'll turn it back to Joanna. What else do you have for us?
So what advice can you give to recent graduates who are interested in working for the hospitality and tourism industry, specifically in LA?
Yeah, it's interesting, and thank God I prepared for this and listened to some of the other interviewees, because that is the most difficult question. And you know, so many times, if there's a nice linear trajectory and you sort of know what you're going to do next, it makes life very easy. We are all now in a situation where it's completely chaotic. You know the impact it's had on the hospitality industry, entertainment industry, what have you. It's really quite difficult. And so for me to think about that logically is maybe that dream job of a drummer or a fireman or an architect, you put that on the back burner a bit and build the bridge. And I was doing a little bit of research for this very reason, and there is a hashtag hiring now, and there's hundreds of thousands of jobs out there. And yeah, they may not be that perfect job, but a job is what you make of it. So if you have an opportunity to, and I know some were suggesting volunteering is fantastic, particularly in a community environment where we need so much right now. Volunteer. If you need the compensation, then maybe look at some of these other jobs that are hourly. They might, again, be your perfect job, but a job is what you make of it. And if you go in and do the absolute best you can on a daily basis and commit yourself and contribute to that organization, it's rewarding. It's absolutely rewarding and gratifying, and can be lucrative. So I would suggest, until the hospitality world sort of stabilizes, continue to make yourself relevant within the hospitality world. And I know we talked about a little bit of this, including this type of a production, some of the digital and virtual elements that are going to be very popular in the near term with meetings and entertainment. At the same time, though, get yourself gainfully employed with some of these other opportunities. Because again, as an employer, I'm going to appreciate the fact that you've dedicated yourself to self improvement during one of the most, if not the most difficult time in our generation. So,
yeah, absolutely. So to continue with this line of questioning, what are some skills that you feel our recent graduates and people who are maybe going into their senior year should start to work on or maybe acquire during this downtime that'll make them more marketable moving forward?
Yeah, I think the answer is sitting in the room or on this call. DJ, professor, author, director, Amani Roberts. I think it's just so important that you understand, what talents, what skill set is relevant within this ever-changing world. And I know many of the others have suggested this sort of digital marketing or digital producer. And that indeed, to me, right now is the most relevant. There will always be face-to-face interaction, and now I guess right now it's just a matter of time and patience. But if it's hotel operations or restaurant operations or entertainment, that's all going to come back. So in the interim, I would also say communication skills. Again, understanding the dynamics of each one of those respective industries and doing sort of a personality match and making sure that it's the right business for you. And then, listen, Google. There's no excuse not to have an answer nowadays. You Google it, right? And so I continually try to educate myself, whether it's with trade publications. And right now we're leaning on government entities, whether it's the city, the county, feds, or what have you. I'm really trying to stay relevant in that way. So I would suggest doing the same.
Good.
Helpful?
Yeah, very helpful. We have a question. Our first question from our lovely audience. So Joey Lorino. Hello, Joey. He says, "Hi, Bryan. If you were just starting out in the industry again, what would you have done differently? What would you have done the same?"
The same is easy. The spirit for adventure, the willingness to undertake new roles that maybe weren't exactly perfect, but had a challenge associated with them. I loved that. I loved being a fixer, if you will. Put me in a hotel that was struggling and I'd try to fix it. And I loved that. That's why I think in my current role, what I love so much is every day is different. And again, COVID notwithstanding, even back in the day, it was just different. So I think that I still, do the same. As far as different, I know I talk about, sort of this linear and organic career progression. I was really fortunate. Every time I took a new job, it came with a little bit more compensation, a little more responsibility, as I said. I think in hindsight, what I would have liked to have done is plan a little bit better and have maybe a little bit clearer of a goal with milestones. I think a couple of the other interviewers had, sort of short-term focus, long-term goals. I think that's a great way to look at it. So I would suggest if there's a milestone or a benchmark role that you want to throw out there and make that your aspirational goal, I'd suggest doing that.
I want to also ask you, explain kind of what your responsibilities are, like what's your role at Discover LA, and then who do you feel in normal circumstances are like your top competitors?
Yeah, great questions. Well, without taking too much time, a DMO or a destination marketing organization, because for some of you that don't know, it's a really small but complex organization. There are so many levers that we're pulling to be successful and or to make the city that we represent successful. So if you look at it sort of from a discipline perspective, and I had to write it down, there's so many, so I'm going to do this. There's sales, marketing, tourism, digital creative, PR, communications, consumer insights, research, operations, admin, HR, business affairs, international, arts and culture, membership, and we have a Dine LA component, which is all food and beverage related, and our restaurant partners within LA. And there's some that I'm missing, I'm sure, but it is incredibly complex. We were a 150-person organization, and unfortunately, due to the recent situation, we're down to a little under 50. And so what we essentially do as a DMO, destination marketing organization, we are contracted by the city to market the destination, and it is just that simple. But when you think about the complexity of a city, from a diversity perspective, we have 140 cultures speaking over 220 languages. We're 467 square miles of a city, very horizontal, with 5 very distinct regions and 88 incorporated cities. It can be daunting. And then you think we have 1,100 members, whether they're venues or hotels or restaurants or what have you, services, transportation. It becomes a bit daunting. And the idea currently in my role right now is what we do is we take buyers, which are mainly meeting planners. We have third-party relationships and so forth too, but they're meeting planners that are planning an event or a conference or a congress or an incentive, and that we're trying to get them to bring them to Los Angeles versus another destination. And ultimately the benefit there is not only the direct spend with our members, so I'm paying for a room night, I'm paying for a taxi, I'm paying for a meal at a restaurant, but there is also a tax component where we have a tourism marketing district, a transit occupancy tax. We also have agreements from a funding mechanism with LAWA, which is Los Angeles World Airports. So we're trying to leverage all of that to fund our organization. And then ultimately, and I think the pinnacle of all this, and I call it kind of the nobility of tourism, if you will, is it's about economic impact and job creation. There's 600,000 hospitality jobs in Los Angeles, and we play a role in developing those jobs. And I guess that's why I say that we have additional responsibility right now, because we've got to bring all those jobs back.
Right.
But that's sort of, in a nutshell, the flow chart of what I do and what we do.
And then who do you normally compete with, in your opinion?
Competition. It's sort of regionalized, if you will, and also, I guess, identified by classification of destination. We are a tier 1 destination, if you will. So that's like a New York, a Chicago, San Francisco, London, Paris, what have you. And that goes on a global level. But then from a regional perspective, we really look primarily East, West Coast, if you will, and the Midwest, and of course Dallas. But on the West Coast, it would be Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego, Anaheim. And again, that's somewhat dependent on whether it's a true convention or if it's a smaller incentive group. And that all those nuances just sort of come out based on the planner's needs.
Yeah. So I'm glad you explained that, because which you and your team do, they have a very special, very important role for the city of Los Angeles. So it's a big deal. And so I want people to understand that that's the fact.
Well, and I appreciate Amani. It's kind of interesting because it's still a bit of a mystery for a lot of people. I think folks get hotels, they get restaurants, they get entertainment, but the whole DMO concept, it's a little nebulous. It can be a little obscure, and until you're in it and really understand it, it's even a difficult language to speak and to convey to folks that don't understand it. But yeah, it is critical. And again, you think about it right now, we want to get transit demand going first, and sort of regional drive-in demand. We want to capitalize on that. It's going to be really all us to send that message. We're open for business.
Exactly. Joanne, I think you remember when we talked about transient and group demand in class in the Star Report, right? You remember all that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Favorite part of class.
I'll let you ask the next question. You don't have to ask about the Star Report, but you can ask a regular question.
Okay. You kind of touched on the responsibilities, but what responsibilities are seen on a typical day at work? And what skills do you practice on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm displaying some of my skills right now, Joanna. No, anyway. Well, okay, I'm going to go back to that keep it simple sort of approach, because I really live by that. And one of the things that we've developed, and again, here we go, more sort of acronyms, if you will, but PTFD kind of keeps us focused. And I don't know if any of my team is watching, but they're probably laughing out loud right now. But that's production, trace activity, forecasting, and decision dates. And I know it sounds a little ridiculous, but what we are dealing with is this sort of, it's sort of unmanageable funnel of business. And the one way that we can keep, acutely aware of what the next steps are is really simplifying it. And the P in production is simply their quotas. We really are looking at salespeople to meet a quota, and most people are familiar with that. The trace activity is really this proactive activity. What are you doing to generate business? Now, I will tell you, during this time, and some of you may have heard this on some of the webinars, it's all about inflection point and when you communicate. And right now may not be the best time to say, hey, when you come to LA, you interested in LA? We've got to figure out what the new landscape is before we get into aggressive, proactive selling. But regardless, we now have a huge account load. So we are reaching out to all of our accounts to make sure that we maintain that relationship. And that's sort of that trace activity. Forecasting, or F, that's really when we're looking forward. We want to have a clear understanding, what does demand look like for our city? And we really need to quantify that so that we are not only self-aware, but we need to be able to share that with all of our stakeholders, and particularly hotels. They're the ones that want to know, hey, how are we looking? What's going on? When can we open up? When can we start bringing team members back, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, decision date. And this one's a little more obscure, but this is when we have a clear opportunity in that funnel of business. And we want to know, when are you going to make a decision? Well, you think about this, we have all this business due to arrive in the remainder of the year, but because of the COVID situation and the hotel situation, we're not sure if they're going to be able to, up to and including air and transportation and other experiential related service providers. So long story short, what we're doing is looking at these decision dates and determining, can we, or do we have to cancel a booking, or can we postpone a booking, or can we actually rebook it maybe in a future year? So again, that's sort of day to day. I know that's a lot. There is a lot more going on too, where we're engaging our stakeholders on so many different levels and so many different things. For me, my big priority is my team. The most valuable resource we have is the human resource. And I believed it when I started. I believe it now.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir on a Friday. I love to say that. When you're looking, speaking of forecasting, you're looking ahead. What is maybe the one event that's going to happen here in LA, whether it's been rescheduled or still going at the original date, that most excites you?
Oh boy, we are so extraordinarily fortunate. Both my immediate superior and my president says, an embarrassment of riches, and it's just so true. So I for me personally, Super Bowl, got to say Super Bowl. I mean, that's just going to be amazing. And then beyond that, right about my retirement age, is going to be the Olympics, LA 2028. Just phenomenal opportunities. And in our world, to me, and I know Pancha was talking a little bit about how she'd love to get into the production side of LA 28. I mean, my God, that's just a dream. So those are probably the two biggies, but there are a lot. Sports oriented, Grammys, there's fun. Yeah,
exactly. Another question from our audience. This comes from Eli Velasquez. Hello, Eli. He says, hi, Mr. Churchill. What are some of the qualities and skills that you seek for in employees?
I don't know if you guys have talked about this much, but it's, attitude is the little thing that makes a big difference. For me, I've had a lot of success hiring folks that had the right attitude and maybe, just enough of the skill set, because you can train. And you can train smart people with good attitudes. And so to me, I know that again, it's a bit nebulous, but I think if you have rounded experience and you've shown this initiative, as I'm saying, during a difficult time to stay employed or do some volunteering, and you can sort of equate some of that volunteering with whether you're, I don't know, supervising other volunteers, or you're doing a project that requires planning and execution, as I said, with the 5 Ps, or you're managing by walking around and engaging others. All of those skills are just so important in our world that if you can display that at an interview, along with an attitude and an awareness and some humility, don't be cocky, I think that's just crucial.
Yeah. Continuing with that thought in terms of skills, you work in the sales arena. You're a very skilled salesperson, one of the best skills people I know. What do you feel are important characteristics for people to really succeed in sales? Because there are a lot of people that are listening that want to go into sales, whether it be, door-to-door sales, not really door-to-door sales, but like event sales, venue sales.
Yeah.
What are the important skills for salespeople, in your opinion?
Yeah. Wow. And I don't know if it's skills. Well, there are skills, so I'll get to that, but it's also sort of personality traits, if you will. I mean, you've got to be tenacious. You've got to be able to take some rejection, and that's, sort of a typical definition of a salesperson is, how many times did you get hung up on kind of a scenario? It's not like that anymore. But the point is, you really have to be, really have the wherewithal and the stamina to go through it. There are these quotas, as I say, and when you don't make your quota, you can't let that get you down. You got to just try harder to get there. So it's that type of competitive nature and that driven nature that's just so important. But at the same time, I think, from a strategy and that 5P perspective, you have to learn how to really navigate through information. Understand qualifying needs. Again, Amani, you're going to remember this: event level, strategic level, and personal level needs. I mean, I live this day by day. And even if I'm in a conversation with somebody, I sort of use that as a basis or a foundation of the conversation. Event level is really simple: rate, state, space, or, could be anything, capacity or what you might need. But it's really quantifiable need, and that's event level. Strategic level is by holding this event or executing this project, what is the desired outcome? Why are you doing this in the first place? And then personal level is that's where that engagement, human to human, what do I as a buyer want to get out of this experience? I want to look good for my boss. I want to hold the best event this company's ever seen before. I don't know what it is, but those are the things that if you sort of use and adapt your skill set to be able to answer those types of questions, I mean, you're a salesperson.
Good.
That
Okay.
help? Okay.
That's very helpful. Yes, Joanna, keep going. What else do you have for us?
Okay, here's a fun type question. Is there a book that you would recommend either for leisure or something that's motivational that you'd like to share? Since I know students right now, they just finished school,
Yeah. I'm so bummed I don't have a copy of it in front of me. DJ's Mean Business. Gotta read it. Gotta read it. Why don't you hold yours up, Amani? No, it's
Right here.
Yeah, I love it. And you know what, though? I mean it with all sincerity. There's something that has that whole KISS principle that really boils it down, distills it into something that's manageable, easily understood, and I think is motivational as well, how you deal with some of these hurdles or obstacles as you're going through a business environment. Yeah. Aside from that, throughout the years, I'm an article reader and not as much of a book reader. And so if there are article readers out there, join the club. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Attention span is limited. I'm voracious about reading short articles and learning and then taking that information and trying to apply it to my world. So I really look currently at online publications, and one that's really popular right now is Skift, S-K-I-F-T.
Yes.
You might know that one, but Google it. It's dynamite. Anything regarding the sort of travel and tourism industry, absolutely phenomenal. And so I kind of rely on that one. And then, as I said, it's all about relevance. Right now, I'm using a whole different set of resources than I ever used before because of the COVID. So I'm really utilizing a different set of resources that are primarily online and real time, because that's what I need, and that's how I'm going to stay relevant.
As we look forward, what are some jobs, in addition to like the digital producer job, what are some other jobs that you're kind of keeping your eye on that you feel we as educators, we as students should also kind of watch, because they could be becoming more prominent in the hospitality entertainment space?
Yeah, well, I guess it's related, but this whole virtual meetings component, and I mean, seriously, you can't get away from it. And I think there are two organizations right now, Cvent, which is a lead platform some of you may have heard of, but they do their Connect show. And then there's Collinson Media, which does another Connect show, two different shows entirely. But they have, I think, brilliantly taken what used to be the traditional trade show environment, have now turned it on its ear and creating more of a hybrid approach where it'll be partially live, with social distancing, and an appropriate setup and food service and so forth, so on, along with the whole virtual component. And to me, learning to navigate that new space is just going to be absolutely imperative. And being, again, young, bright-eyed, and aware, you're going to be in the perfect situation to be able to, again, to kind of bend, and everybody's saying pivot right now and be flexible. So pivot.
Yeah.
Is that helpful, Amani? Or
yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of the best way to ask it. Like, when you're looking, we're going to continue to look forward, and maybe how do you feel hotels are going to change or look different moving forward? And then also, how will meetings evolve moving forward?
Yeah. It's the whole crystal ball thing. So I wish I had answers. And so I can tell you what I hope, and what, based on, sort of limited data that I'm privy to. But there's so much work going on. I'll start with hotels first. I did some research last week where every major brand is essentially putting together health and safety standards for the individual traveler that's arriving and seeking accommodations, room service, food and beverage experience, and so forth. And that's sort of one bucket. The other bucket that I, frankly, am a little bit more focused on is the meetings bucket, or the group travel, incentive travel, whatever you want to call it. How is that going to work? And so right now, I think it's a bit easier to tackle the transit. It's a little bit more difficult to tackle the large group, because you're talking about social distancing in an enclosed environment. They're saying now that outside might be a lot better than being inside. But I think the brilliant nature of these hotel brands collectively, working independently, and then us trying to aggregate that collectively, we're going to have a fantastic message to send on how you can come back to a hotel safely. How you do meetings is going to be probably a little bit further out on the horizon. We are now beginning to leverage DMCs, or destination management companies, because they are the ones that are so production based. So they're trying to figure out, what does a new event look like? We are also leveraging, as I said, those trade shows, and what sort of methodology and are they adopting in their world. And we're going to, again, we've sort of positioned ourselves that we're not the creator of the information, but we are the aggregator and the provider to the stakeholders. So we're going to get all that information and put it together. But I'm confident, and again, this is where I don't have the medical expertise, but I'm confident that if we flatten the curve and continue to see the momentum, and with the way the states are opening up right now, I think we'll be back to a relative normal sooner than we think. Right now, our crystal ball is we just want to limp through the best we can in fourth quarter of 2020, and we're hoping it's relatively back to normal by first quarter 2021.
Great. What else do you have for us, Joanna?
Is there any jobs that you think will rise after the pandemic that have probably not been really seen as a busy job today? Today.
Sort of new jobs that'll be created based on this new environment. Yeah. It's funny, because the one I think of, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about, the whole contact tracer. Have you heard about this on the news? Yeah. Well, we're literally going to need that, and so they're hiring thousands of contact tracers for the COVID remediation. So it's so interesting because that's something, I mean, that term never even entered our vocabulary before. But, that I will tell you, I'm a little reticent to say because I don't really know. And I think we keep kind of going down this narrow path of digital and virtual and what have you. But I kid you not, I think that is going to be relevant and continue to be relevant regardless of the recovery. Particularly in hospitality. Now, hotels are very employee dense. They need a large staff to be successful. And in fact, if you think about a typical hierarchy of a pyramid, you have those at the top that are the leaders, and then those that are doing the real work. Where hotels are sort of inverted. It's everyone. It was front of the house, back of the house, what have you. They're the ones doing the work, and so we're going to need to rehire that quickly. I think again, it's a matter of bridging the gap. Just be patient. Those jobs are going to come back. I just, with the crystal ball scenario, don't know exactly when.
Yeah. We talk a lot about MPI at Cal State Fullerton, and within many of our guest speakers are members as well. The good thing about you is that you have a more broader perspective because you're a part of several other professional associations. So my question is, how important are professional associations to you personally and professionally?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've taken a little bit of a non-traditional approach. There are so many that have been on these interviews that are leaders or presidents-elect, and so forth, so on. I've really been more of a participant or a follower. And I use these trade organizations as a resource for me. I think if I had different priorities, or I guess everybody's got the time, but if I had the time that I wanted to commit to these, I could probably get into a leadership role if I could. But I'm very envious of, in fact, one of my colleagues, Meryl S. Kroc, who's my counterpart in Anaheim, has been a president, and Amani with MPI. So that sort of dedication is phenomenal. But I've taken a bit of a more, as you say, a more holistic approach where I'm leveraging all the respective organizations. So whether it's Cal SAE or SITES, ASAE, MPI, I'm missing a few. PCMA. All of those, we really are hyper engaged with from a marketing perspective as well as from a partnering perspective. And that's where I'm able to really gather a lot of my information. But I think it's 100% critical. And in this current environment, those face-to-face network opportunities to self-promote, if you will, and to establish your personal brand, can't beat it. Got to do it.
Yeah, definitely. How do you feel hospitality has evolved since you began your career? What's maybe one of the most surprising technological developments that you've witnessed in your career so far?
We don't use fax machines anymore. Does anybody know what a fax machine is anymore? No, anyway. Yeah, listen, I think for hospitality, it was sort of that feel-good business that was run from the heart. And then the street got a hold of us, and the street meaning Wall Street. And then it was profit center, and it was all about running it as a business. You combine that with technology, and boy, it kind of flipped us on our ear. It definitely went from that sort of business of a heart to a real business. But what I love about it is the heart has never left. It's still there, and that's what makes us so different. I know on Facebook right now, like I said, I'm not much of a Facebooker, but there is a particular hospitality tag that's happening, and there's just constant feeds and contributions or what have you, posts. And it's just so neat to read because there are so many of us out there that share that same passion. And whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, we love hospitality. So that has remained. It's just going from the sort of, again, a business of the heart only and gut to now it's all data. It's all data.
All data. One of the things I admire about you the most, Bryan, is just your resilience and your ability to navigate through very difficult times, whether it be personal kind of issues or things going on, or professional, when maybe there's a boss that's not really meeting your needs, or like what we're going through now with the pandemic. How are you able to stay so level-headed, stay resilient, and just navigate through so many tough times in life and in business?
Wow. That number one, thank you. That's like one of the nicest things that anybody's ever said. I hope my wife heard that. It's all about humility, and don't take yourself too seriously. There are so many other things happening in the world, to other people, to other continents that are just extreme in nature. And so I just try to remain humble. And it's true. I do my best. Sometimes, we used to call this at Marriott, it was a gold band decision. Every once in a while, you have to make a gold band decision. That means you're in a position of authority and you have to just do it. You can't think about it emotionally. This is the decision we have to make. And so that's where you can kind of step back, use that rationale. And I'm telling you, just this most recent to have the conversation with people that we are in layoffs after working with them for 8 years. Most difficult thing I've gone through in years. But to try to, put that in perspective and have an understanding about that has allowed me, I guess, to, remain resilient, but also hopefully afford and provide some kind of direction and guidance for those that are special in my life.
Yeah. Well, keep it up. Good job. Joanna, I'm going to turn it over to you for our last few questions. I'll ask one final one, but we're almost done here.
Okay. So I know you two are pretty close friends. So how have you guys maintained communication over the years through different locations and different positions you guys worked?
Yeah.
How do you guys keep it? You have a professional friendship, and I feel like you guys have a real friendship. So how do you keep it going?
That's a great question, Joanna. I'll let Bryan answer first, and then I'll answer.
Okay.
That's a great question. I love it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's dynamite because I think it's probably indicative of a lot of relationships out there in the business world that turn to friendships, and particularly within the hospitality world where you don't see it coming. When we first met, evidently I wasn't saying the very nice things that I thought I was, but I was in a position where there was, again, sort of an accountability element. So that's how we first met. But then it becomes you gain one another's respect. And this guy, and I love him, is talking about tenacity and the ability to, think outside the box and recreate and be a chameleon and what have you. Well, that was something that I didn't necessarily possess. And so you start, feeding off each other's skill sets. We found ourselves, oftentimes we had 16, this was in a kind of a separate evolution, but we found ourselves with 16 hotels and 9 ownership groups in a pretty chaotic environment. And we spent a lot of time in the car sort of commiserating, and you really start finding out a lot about each other. And it was funny. And we would end up giggling a lot of the time. And also, like I said, commiserating and crying ourselves to sleep. But we've remained friends ever since. And I'll tell you, kudos to Amani, because I think this is one of these skills. He is dynamite about making sure, hey, when are we getting together? When are we going to talk? When are we going to do that? That's a sales skill that is absolutely invaluable. You've got to have that cadence with whether it's friends, customers, or what have you, your stakeholders. So, yeah, that's the money.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Just to continue, like we worked together. We had our job with area sales leaders, which was just, intense, very intense job. We'd have to drive down to Orange County all the time. So 2-hour commutes together and just working through that. Then we meet up at the Torrance Marriott for our little office. We had a team we were managing. We had ownership groups. So that was interesting. But still, we got through it together. Bryan had to kind of dip out before I did. He was like, I'm out. But, we hung it. We did a really good job. And now they've changed the job so dramatically since we were in it. It would have been completely different if we were doing it the way they do it now. And then we just kind of kept in touch. And he was very supportive when I decided to take a massive risk and just leave Marriott and kind of start to DJ full time and do that. And then, he still helps me with like business advice and life advice. So it's just like what you'll find is like in hospitality, we work so closely together that you just get to be close friends, and it's just organic. And that's what's happened. And then when I got to Fulton, Bryan came to come talk at Hello Hospitality one year, and then you coming to be on the board. So you just gotta have people around that you trust. And Bryan's like a big brother. So I go ask Big Brother, what do you say? So yeah.
I don't know about big, but definitely older.
So we're kind of toward the end of our time. I guess I'll ask maybe the final question. Do you have a final one, Joanna, or you want me to kind of go? What do you think?
You could go. You go ahead.
Okay. For what advice, just kind of summarize the message you would give, and then we'll put this on video another time as well, but to people who are graduating like right now, like May 2020, really to kind of keep them with some hope, because a lot of them are very scared, understandably so. A lot of them are like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. What's the message you would have from kind of Bryan Churchill to them?
Wow. It's, and I will tell you guys, this kind of keeps me up at night because you are in a very unique situation in your lives. Just the atmosphere, the environment that we're dealing with right now, geopolitical environment, the pandemic. it's really difficult to carve out any, salient advice. But I will say, what has allowed me to remain happy all these years, regardless of trials and tribulations and challenges and so forth, is do what you love and you never work a day in your life. I know it's cliche, but it's absolutely true. And then make the job what you want it to be. And if you can't, then don't be afraid to, move on. So facts before fear. Make sure you have a clear understanding, of the realities before you're fearful of doing anything. Take the leap. I hate this one, but what we're doing, nobody's dying here. So make the decision and make that commitment. And again, the risk is really going to come with great reward. So in this particular environment, I'm going to go with my bridge example. Build the bridge until normalcy. And if that means you have to make some additional sacrifices that you really didn't see coming, just be prepared to do that. If anything, it's going to give you greater character and a greater motivation for future successes.
Awesome. Great answer. So we really appreciate you being on our Virtual Industry Insider. We're very appreciative also your work with us on the advisory board. So we're happy to have you. Can't wait to see you in person very soon. Thank you for taking an hour out of your busy day, because I know you are quite busy. So we appreciate that. Joanna, well done on the co-hosting job. Nice questions. Thank you very much, Joanna.
Good job, Joanna.
And we are going to see you next week. We have a little video to play, and just thanks everyone. Make sure you stay safe out there. Good luck on any final exams you might have, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
Next week's guest is Tiffany Sant Anselmo, aka DJ Ruby Blue, who is the Associate Director of A&R Operations at Epic Records. Tiffany has previously worked at Disney Music Publishing and Hollywood Records and has a plethora of experience in the music business. See you on Wednesday for our virtual EHM graduation and next Friday for our Industry Insider. Stay safe.